So the topic today is Srila Prabhupada. And my experiences with Srila Prabhupada when he was physically present, and also perhaps after he has left as well. It is still going on. So it was 1970 in Boston, USA, and I was searching for a guru. I knew I had to have a guru, and there were many gurus in Boston at that time, so I was trying the different ones, and one of them said, if you chant this mantra morning and night, and in between you can do as you like, within 6 months you will become God, or at least liberated. And I tried, but no, it didn't work. And I tried different Zen yoga and Hatha yoga and so many different ones. So I would always ask, so what is your process? And if I do this, then what can I achieve at the end? So then the day came where my husband and I, we hitchhiked. We had no money because we were hippies. We hitchhiked to the Boston Temple because we saw an advertisement in the newspaper, Love Feast. So we thought, oh, okay, let's check this out. And so we got to the temple, and I asked, so what's your process? They said, well, you have to chant and dance and eat. I said, okay, I'll try. And there are also many books. So I tried, and after the first time I heard the Hare Krishna mantra, it didn't go out from my head, because I was a musician and I was trained to listen very carefully. And so when I heard the sound of the Maha Mantra, I said, this is the perfect sound. I never heard this sound before in all my music studies. And in the music, when I was a musician, I was thinking, I want to communicate with I was a classical musician. I want to communicate with the people of the past, the composers who wrote their music, and feel what they were feeling and try to express it. But with Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you're going beyond all these people who already died, and you're going straight to God, and you're communicating with Him. This is really good. And they said, if you chant, you will see God face to face. I said, yes, I want to see God face to face. So, after 5 months, the devotee said, Prabhupada is coming. How would you like to stay for the weekend? I said, yes, let me stay for the weekend. So I stayed for the weekend, and on Friday came, or Saturday, and they said, Prabhupada phoned and said, I'm not able to come, but I'm sending 4 sannyasis instead. And one of those sannyasis was Vishnujan Maharaj. And he took us out on Harinam day and night. And after the weekend, I said, I'm so happy, why should I go back home? So I went back home and I said goodbye to my husband. And not only me, but 4 or 5 devotees never went back home that weekend. We all became devotees. And it was because of Srila Prabhupada, because I was hesitating to join. I was not, I was thinking, my husband wasn't so interested as I was, and I would, I thought, I'll have to give up so many things if I join the temple, like I won't be able to dance in the rain anymore. Well, I tell you, Krishna fulfills all desires. After that, I was on Harinam 10 hours a day, and we were in the rain and the snow and the sun for 10-hour Harinam every day. So no problem with dancing in the rain. We were dancing for 6 months. After 6 months, they sent us to Florida. But it was so exciting that we completely lost touch with the material world because we were doing so much Harinam. And even with our bodies, we couldn't quite contact with even our bodies. We didn't know what was happening. Because I remember somebody once asked me, you look a little like you have a fever. I was flushed. And I said, well, maybe either I have a fever or maybe it's ecstatic symptoms, I'm not sure. It was like, that's how we were. You need translation? Yeah? Okay. I hope I'll have to speak slowly, more slowly. Translation in Finnish. So, yes, we were very, and also before I joined, I asked Pradyumna, who's a Sanskrit scholar, I said, so, tell me about your process. And he's saying, well, first there's Shraddha, faith, then there's bhajana, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, association with devotees, follow the rules, and then there's nishta, there's steadiness, then there's taste, ruchi, and asakti, and I said, so what stage are you on? And he said, I'm on ruchi. So that's how we thought. In those days, we thought, well, yeah, in just a few weeks we'll be pure devotees and we'll go back to Godhead. We felt back to Godhead, actually, on the Harinam. We were so happy that we didn't want to do anything else. But also, so what I learned from that first experience of joining was that when you are hesitating to take the next step, when I was hesitating, Prabhupada would push me. And he gave that push just by, he didn't even come. He just said, I'm coming. He just phoned up and he said, and just because he said he's coming, we all joined. That week, 4 or 5 of us, we didn't go back home after spending a weekend in the temple. Of course, in those days, you could not be outside the temple. To be a devotee, you had to be living in the temple. There was no outside devotees. If you were outside, you were in Maya. Even if you were chanting. But now it's completely different. Everybody's outside, few people inside. It's changed completely. But in those days, you had to join. And everybody was equal, grihastas, there were no vanaprasthas. We were all young. We were between 16 and 22. I was on the borderline, I was 22. My husband was really old, he was 25. Actually, one devotee told me she joined when she was 23, and they said, since you're so old, maybe you can teach the children something. We were very young in those days. Yes, so not only was I doing 10 hours Harinam, the ISKCON press was at the temple at that time, and we were typesetting Bhagavad Gita as it is. I knew how to type. So the first day I walked in, they gave me Upanishad, and they said, Pradyumna, he said, so now you have to learn how to read Sanskrit. He gave me Upanishad. See, there's a Sanskrit, there's the English. Now you read it in Sanskrit and you put it in, you transliterate it into English. So we had to do that. After the first day I learned Sanskrit, how to read Sanskrit. And off I was. 4 hours a day, that was going 24 hours. Prabhupada wanted, typesetting in those days was not, we didn't have computers. We didn't even have electric typewriters. But the typesetting machine was electric. And anyway, it was the whole process, which I won't describe. Well, I guess I can. It was, because it's, it's kind of ancient. You don't know, you people have never seen such a thing. It was like a huge machine, 5 feet tall, and you would type one line, and then you would look at the machine, it would have 2 dials, and it would say C4, and at the end of your line you type C4. Then the next line you type, and it says B7, you type B7. So then they give you photographic paper, which is going to go to the press, like the final page you have to type. Then you type, and you set the dial before each line, C4, and then you type in B7, and it comes straight. That was typesetting. And layout was, they took all the photographic paper and laid it out on the floor. It was layout. That's where they got the name, layout. See, I'm giving you some history here. And cut and paste meant that if we made a mistake, we would have to retype it, and they would cut it out and paste it on the page, on the photographic paper. Cut and paste. So it was actually cut and paste and layout. So this was in 1970. That was the process for making a book. We had to do it on the photographic paper, including going from Sanskrit to English, so it was quite a challenge. Prabhupada wanted that machine to go 24 hours. We were on a 24-hour shift. And he said, when you're typesetting, you're also chanting Hare Krishna. He told us. It's the same as japa. So we were doing a lot of japa. And in our spare time, we were doing Harinam. So it was really nice. I was chanting Hare Krishna. And then after 6 months, of course, I'll tell you who, in our temple, the president was Srila. He was in Grihastham. And the Sankirtan Harinam leader was Giriraj Maharaj, who was Brahmachari. The temple commander was Sridhananda Maharaj, who was Brahmachari. And Jayadvaita Maharaj was in charge of the press. Bhavananda was in charge of the interior decoration. So every room was a shocking different color. We had purple, pink, orange, green, and the outside of the house was purple, and we were in a very conservative neighborhood. So it was really completely a different world when you walk into that house. About 65 of us were in this small house, maybe 2-3 stories house. But it was very ecstatic. And we were reading the books, we were having classes. Somehow, I don't know how we did it, but yeah, for 2 months we didn't have to go to Mangalarti until one day the Pujari complained to Prabhupada, nobody's coming to Mangalarti except me. Then Prabhupada started, everyone has to go to Mangalarti. Before we were out on the streets till midnight and doing Harinam, or 11 o'clock, and we would get up at 6. But then we had to start Mangalarti. And yeah, so then after 6 months, Satsrupa Prabhu said, I'm sending you to Florida. Now Boston is at the top northern part and Florida is in the southern part. How did he send us? Not by plane, not by train, not by bus. Hitchhike. He dropped us out on the highway in our yellow sheets. We didn't have dhotis and saris, we had sheets, like bed sheets. Yellow for married people, and orange for saffron for ladies and men, brahmacharis and brahmacharis. Everybody wore saffron, and if you were married, you wore yellow. The color, I don't know, it was a very bright yellow. So there we were on the street, and we didn't have suitcases, we had boxes with our belongings. We didn't have money for suitcases. And there we were hitchhiking. Now, who's going to pick us up? You know, it's a very rare sight. But we got a ride to New York, and the devotees were merciful, and they let us collect for a bus ticket to Florida. So after, I described in the class this morning, after, oh yes, it was 6 months. The standard for initiation was you had to live in the temple for 6 months, and then you could get initiation. So after 6 months, I asked the temple president, so I want to get initiated. Oh, I forgot to tell you, my husband joined 2 months later after me. Because his philosophy was, I won't work. And I was working a little bit, so we had some money. Then after I joined, what could he do? He had to join because devotees don't work. So he could, you know, we just did Harinam the whole day. It was fun. So he joined 2 months after me. Then Satsu said, I'm sending you to Florida, hitchhiking. And also I said, so I want to get initiated. He said, okay, just wait 2 more months for your husband, wait for 8 months. I said, okay. So after 8 months, I say to my husband, so let's get initiated. He says, I'm not ready. So I said, well, I'm not waiting any longer for you. I wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and I said, if you don't initiate me, I'm a dead body. And I quoted Srimad Bhagavatam, that if the second canto we had, if you do not get the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord on your head, then you are like a dead body. So I quoted that verse, and I said, I need to be initiated. I didn't bring my beads, they're upstairs, but we had to make our own beads. We had to string our own beads. We didn't have any beads from India. Prabhupada was in India at that time. So I strung my beads, I sent it with a letter. He chanted on my beads, he sent it back with a letter. And Prabhupada said in my initiation letter that your first birth is from your material father and mother. Second birth is from the spiritual master. So now your path is open to go back home, back to Godhead. And he gave me 6 instructions. 1, to chant at least 16 rounds. 2, strictly follow the 4 regulative principles. 3, read and study all my books. 4, go on Sankirtan, Harinam, preaching. And 5, do deity worship, go to Arti, do deity worship. And so the first 5 I've been doing. For 7 years I was Pujari in Calcutta Temple in India. For 7 years I was doing preaching, book distribution in Bombay, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, traveling book distribution. And since almost 20 years I'm reading and studying the books and teaching. But the 6th instruction is yet to be done, and that is 24 hours be engaged in Krishna service. So that is, let's see what happens in the future. That will happen. We are trying. But anyway, so that was, we were 1 year in Florida. The first 6 months we were in a, where was it, University of Tallahassee, Florida. And then after 1 year finished, then they sent my husband and I out to start a new temple in Jacksonville, Florida. And of course, you know, they just send you with no money, nothing, nothing. You have to find a place to stay, you have to do everything. And depend on Krishna. You really have to depend on Krishna. So, then after that, 1 month, after 6 months, we went to Dallas. And Prabhupada said he wanted 50 devotees to go to India. So, from every temple, some devotees were chosen. Satsrup said, I'm sending you to India. We thought, oh, how are we going to get there now? So, anyway, again, we went to New York. They were merciful. And they let us collect for our ticket to India. So we got 2 one-way tickets, $300 each, because Prabhupada said, go to India. He didn't say go back. So we didn't go back. We just stayed in India. And I'm still in India since 1972. We went to India in 1972. And people ask me, what inspired you to go to India? I said, Prabhupada said, go. So I went. Very simple. We got the order of the spiritual master, and we accepted whatever he asked. We just did. And out of 25 devotees actually went at the time I went, and out of those 25, only 5 stayed, because conditions were very, very austere. In Bombay, we landed in Bombay. And there was no temple, there was no place for devotees to stay. We were basically living on the land. And the men were living in a hut, and the hut was the combined men's ashram, prasadam room, kitchen, office, everything in one hut. And the ladies were on the roof of one of the buildings in the back. That was ladies' ashram, and it was summer. It was very hot. And so that was the living conditions in Bombay. And the hut was really, really austere. The deities were living in a tent. There was no doors. So the night that we arrived, the morning we came to Mangalarti, that night, their crowns and flute were stolen because there was no door. Somebody just came, and there was one devotee guarding, but he was sleeping. So it was like that. Even the deities were living austerely, just as we were on the land. And I remember, I'll never forget my first time in prasadam room, watching the huge rats running across the roof. And I was hoping it wouldn't fall on my plate. And it didn't. It fell in someone else's, to my delight. It was the person who was sleeping that night in front of the deities, and I guess that was the reaction. That he was sleeping and supposed to be protecting the deities. Anyway, drinking water was in a clay pot with a lid. You take off the lid and all these bugs would fly out from it. mosquitoes, because there was no like Bisleri or bottled water in those days. We had to just, we're at the mercy of whatever we got. And so we all were sick, very sick. It took about 3-4 days, and then we get sick. Very difficult times, but Srila Prabhupada appreciated our sacrifice. He used to go on morning walk with Dr. Patel, and Dr. Patel was merciful to the devotees. He donated mattress and blanket and mosquito net. But unfortunately, after a few 2 years, everything was lost. The devotee, somehow the mattresses disappeared and everything disappeared. And Dr. Patel was complaining to Prabhupada, they don't care about their health. They're not taking care of themselves. And Srila Prabhupada said to Dr. Patel was an impersonalist. He thought liberation, this is the ultimate goal of life. He wanted liberation. So Srila Prabhupada said, that liberation you so much desire, they have it already. They don't care about material conditions. They have it. Dr. Patel was quiet. Anyway, but it was difficult to, I remember His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj was complaining, Prabhupada, this is too much austerity. And Prabhupada said, don't you want to be purified? Yes, purification. So after 2 weeks, they sent us to Calcutta because they needed pujaris in Calcutta. And I was so happy because I got a roof over my head, at least. No water and no electricity, but at least I had a roof over my head, which was quite nice. And we were sleeping on the floor on just mats, like chotai, I don't know what you call them, mats, straw mats. 18 years I was on the floor, on the straw mat. But it was pretty comfortable. When you're young, now it's not possible. But it was wonderful. The first time I actually saw Srila Prabhupada was in Gainesville, Florida. And it is in Satsut Maharaj's biography of Prabhupada, This Remote Corner of the World is the title of the chapter. And I saw Prabhupada first at the airport, and he was walking, and I was following behind him. And for the first time in my life, I felt here is someplace I belong. I never felt I belonged in America, or I just didn't belong here. But when I was following Prabhupada, I said, yes, this is where I belong, and I can do this the rest of my life. I felt like that. Remember when I was 10 years old in my school classroom in America, and I was looking at the other children, I was thinking, I'm not one of them. I don't know where I'm from. Maybe I'm from another country, maybe I'm from another planet, but one thing I know is I'm not American. I'm not one of them. So when I went to India, I felt better. But when I met Srila Prabhupada, that was it. I said, okay, this is where I belong, I'm his follower. That's why I didn't feel good. I didn't fit really in the world so much. But yeah, so then I met him first there, and I remember it was quite a scene. There was this huge yasasan, and it took about 5 or 6 men to carry it, and they were following Prabhupada with it. He was walking, and they were going down with this huge yasasan, and Prabhupada took one look, and disgusted look, and he wouldn't sit on it because they were making such a scene, at the airport. It was too much. So, yes. Indradumna Maharaj also, Sitala was telling the story how the first day he joined, the first day he went on Harinam, Indradumna Maharaj. And he was so happy, he said, I can do this the rest of my life. And he is. He's doing Harinam the rest of his life. So yes, we get that feeling when we join Krishna consciousness. Yes, why didn't I do this sooner? So in India, the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, 1972, Nectar of Devotion lectures. We were sitting at Radha Damodar temple, and it was not like today. It looked like a bombed out building. You couldn't tell it was a temple. There's all this, like the building was falling apart, and it was all over the ground. Even in the courtyard, there was just like pieces of rocks everywhere, like the building. But one thing was good, it was the original dust of Vrindavan. Now it's all paved and you can't touch it anymore. We were sitting in the dust, the same dust that the 6 Goswamis sat, and they were discussing Bhagavatam. Same dust that Krishna was playing in. And we were hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Prabhupada in the morning, and in the evening it was Nectar Devotion. So, Srila Prabhupada was lecturing, he was trying to convince the Brijbasis to accept us as Vaishnavas. And it was hard for them to accept. They never saw foreigners. They were all Brijbasis, Vrindavan people. And hard for them to accept that we were devotees of Krishna. And Prabhupada was trying to convince them. And every evening he would have darshan in his rooms after the class. And one time he had some bananas at his feet. And one of our Vrindavan monkeys ran in, took the bananas, and ran out the door. And Prabhupada said, "See how expert, how intelligent this monkey is. None of you would dare to do that." He said, "But the monkey is very intelligent for eating. Don't be intelligent for eating." He said. No. So one time in darshan, he picked me out, and he said, "My sister tells me that you speak Bhagavatam very nicely." And I was completely bewildered because I never spoke Bhagavatam and what to speak of nicely. So I was trying to remember, why did she say that? And then I remembered, oh yeah, on Janmashtami day, our tradition in each temple that we had to read Krishna book from morning until night. And we take turns. So my turn came and I was reading Krishna book and I was being very dramatic. And Prabhupada's sister was sitting right in front of me, listening. And she doesn't know a word of English, only Bengali. I was reading in English. And she was crying. And she said to Prabhupada, "She speaks Bhagavatam very nicely." Okay, so that's how my career started, 1972. And, but then, what happened 30 years later, I just started speaking Bhagavatam. And so I understood, well, if the words come out from the mouth of the pure devotee, then it must happen. It must come true. So two things happened in my life with Srila Prabhupada, one in Vrindavan, one in Mayapur, like that. And the first was in Vrindavan, that he said, speaking Bhagavatam. I thought, oh, okay, I just, forgot about it. Then when I started speaking Bhagavatam, I remembered, oh, Prabhupada said, it's okay, it happened. So back to Calcutta, 1973, Srila Prabhupada came to the temple. Whenever he would come, I would type for him. One time he was translating Canto 5, Chapter 18. It was the prayers of Lakshmi Devi to the Lord, Pradyumna. So and there was one verse, it was like a really wonderful verse, and it was a mantra, Om Ram Hrim Haram Om Namo Bhagavate Rishikeshaya. So I heard Prabhupada say that. Then he said in the purport, this is a mantra. All devotees should chant this to be perfect in their spiritual life, to make advancement. So I said, oh, Prabhupada's giving me a mantra. So I played it 5 times, so I got it in my head, and I was very happy about that. So then in 73, Prabhupada came to Calcutta, and so he was on his way to Mayapur. When he would come to Calcutta, they never went directly to Mayapur, but in those days you had to come first to Calcutta, and then from Calcutta you would go to Mayapur. Same with if you're going to fly from Mayapur, you'd have to go first to Calcutta and then go to the airport. So Prabhupada was doing that. He would come to Calcutta every time he was going or coming from Mayapur. So he was on his way to Mayapur, and Pradyumna Prabhu saw me. He was the Sanskrit editor, and he remembered me from Boston. And he said, "Oh, how would you like to come to Mayapur with Srila Prabhupada? Srila Prabhupada is translating Chaitanya Charitamrita. All you have to do is learn how to read Bengali, and we're leaving tomorrow." So I said, "No problem." Because we want to go with Prabhupada. You'll do anything to go with him. As he said, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. So he gave me the Bengali book. I learned to read and put it into English, and off I was the next day with Srila Prabhupada to Mayapur. Again, austere conditions. We were living in the Lotus building, which was under construction, which means that there was a bathroom but no pipes. So you couldn't use it, of course. There was a pump downstairs, and there was an outhouse somewhere in some dark field, which the ladies would never go out there, especially in the dark before Mulati. But anyway, that's how the situation, and there were no windows. There were holes in the walls where the windows were going to be. The doors had no handles, so if the huge wind would come, the door would fly open. Even we put these big, huge marble pieces in front of the door, it would smash the marble against the wall and fly open, because the winds in Mayapur are really heavy. So, yeah, and the ladies' ashram, we had no door to our room, so we had to go through the next room to get out, but that room had no floor, and we were on the first floor. So we had to walk on this wooden plank across the room to get out the door, in and out. It didn't go all the way down to the ground, but it was like 4 feet drop. But anyway, that we didn't care because we were with Prabhupada. So we knew that how many austerities we were doing, he was doing more. So we didn't care. We were happy. We were with Prabhupada, and when you're with Prabhupada, you're in the spiritual world. So you don't feel any inconvenience. So then one day I was in another room typing Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I was sitting on the ground. There was a trunk. They didn't have desks or anything like that in those days. It must have been a trunk. And the typewriter was a manual typewriter, which maybe none of you have seen. It requires no electricity. You just type on it, and then if you want to return, you just smash it back like that. You know, type and back you go. So that's a manual typewriter. And so I was typing, and I had the headphones on. I was listening to Prabhupada. He was speaking Bengali. I had this big Bengali book in front of me, and I was reading in Bengali, and I would put it into English letters. So Prabhupada saw me, and he said, "Oh, you know Bengali?" I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." A good thing he didn't speak to me in Bengali. So then he said, "Oh, come to my room. Very good editor you are." I said, "Come to my room." So he said, "You know Bengali?" "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." So he said, "So, I want you to learn how to type in Bengali, and we will do many books together." I said, "Oh, well, I'm going to travel with Prabhupada and type for him." And never happened, because meanwhile back in Calcutta, they got a new temple president, and all the pujaris were afraid of him, so they all left the temple. And they called me back to be the head pujari in Calcutta. And his name was Gargamuni. And he had a reputation, so they all ran away from the temple. Prabhupada used to call him Garga Money, because he was good at making money. So, yeah, but anyway, I did learn how to type in Bengali. There was one brahmachari, Sachidananda, was teaching me with the Bengali typewriter. And I said to him, "Look, you don't have to look at the keys, you just look at the paper, and you can type like this, touch typing, you know, how we do in English. And he said, oh, now I understand what Srila Prabhupada told me. Srila Prabhupada told me you teach her and you learn from her also. So I was teaching him touch typing in Bengali. But the moral of the story was that Prabhupada said we will do many books together. And 30 years later I started writing books. I feel like the inspiration of Srila Prabhupada. And now 12, 13 books already finished. And maybe 5, 8 more to go. So those words came true as well. That prediction was like a prediction. We will do many books together in speaking Bhagavatam. And I never thought that I'm going to write books or speak Bhagavatam, but it happened. Because Prabhupada said it. So back in Calcutta, one time I was doing Mangalarti. I had to do, it's kind of like our pujari here, you have to do everything. Mangalarti, noon arti, 4 o'clock arti, evening arti, wake them up, put them to sleep, and dress them morning and night, and 20 hours seva, 4 hours sleep. So I was doing Mangalarti, and Srila Prabhupada, one time I was offering the Gila, and I turned around, and right behind me, 6 inches away was Srila Prabhupada, standing, just right behind me. It was all on the same level, the deity room and the temple. There was just this little chain separating us. So I was really nervous. I said, well, what shall I do? Shall I offer him the ginam? Should I do a puja? Do. So I think I did a fast puja, and then I gave him ginam. And then the whole arti, he was standing right behind, watching me. So I was very nervous, and very focused, and very attentive in that arti. And afterwards, I thought, well, I should do all my service like that. That Srila Prabhupada is standing right behind watching me, what I'm doing. And my service will be very focused and attentive. And so that's what I learned from that. Another thing, we had very opulent flower decoration in Calcutta. I had one man, he was donating 50 garlands every day. 50. We had Radha Govinda, Gaur Radha Govinda, and Jagannath deities. And I would change the flowers 5 times a day. 5 times a day. And we had 4 kinds of champa. One was, there were 2 shades of yellow. One was light yellow, and the Bengalis, they said the light yellow color is the color of Lord Chaitanya. And then there was a dark golden one, they said that's the color of Radharani. And then there's a white champa, and then there was the ones that we see in the rest of the world that are like, they open up like into petals, white and yellow. We had rose, gardenia, lotus, every day 144 lotuses. Lotus, 144 roses. Besides the garlands, we had lots of flowers. So what would happen, behind the deities there was a window. And every day 2 bumblebees would come on Radha Govinda's side, and they would circumambulate the deities, and they would sit in the lotus flowers. So often I would go in the deity room and